Hello, everybody. Thank you for the welcome. Oh, Ryan's clapping as well. Must be a good day. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Prestige Reef Dork show. Welcome to everybody watching on YouTube. And for those of you who don't know, because I came across someone yesterday who didn't know, this is now available as a podcast. So you can listen to it whilst you're driving on the train, all that sort of stuff. You can check it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and basically anywhere you get podcasts. And with me, so I am Alex, of course, Reef Dork, and with me, as always, is Ryan from the UK's #1 it's coral selling website, prestigereef.co.uk.
Thank you,
Ryan. Dare I ask, how are you?
I have had a rough weekend. Is the honest answer. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't even going to do this, but I don't let people down. And when I said to you I was going to do it, I decided to stick to it. But so I've actually had two major issues. One of them is with the tank, which I'll explain in a minute. One is actually to do with my family, which is like a personal thing. So the combination of the two has basically brought me to my knees this weekend. And that's genuinely the truth.
Yeah.
I know it sounds a bit downbeat to start the show with, but the reason I wanted to come on is because I spend so much time, and I realize this, motivating people not to give up when I do the consultations. And it's like this. I cannot tell you the last time I wanted to give up as much as this. It's as simple as that. It's a little bit more difficult when you have a business. But it's I think it's important, and I'm not saying this because I want sympathy. In fact, anyone who puts sympathy in the comments, I'll be annoyed, because this was entirely my fault. I don't take sympathy well.
Okay.
But it was just been a really hard weekend, basically.
So what's happened?
Right. So I misdiagnosed Bruckinella, I think is how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
The reason I misdiagnosed it is because it shows differently in different fish. So on clownfish, they get these sort of like spots and stuff like that. Whereas with other fish, it doesn't present in the same way. And I only realized it when some of the scales fell off some of the it was actually the damselfish, the Starkey damselfish. And I thought that was strange. I originally thought something may have been in a fight with it. Oh, thanks, Alex.
I wanted to. So I was just looking
into the wound.
No, I wanted to. You said so. Bruckinella is clownfish disease, right? And
yes.
I wanted to see what it looked like on a different fish. So this is one of your angels. Is that the blue face?
Yes, that is the blue face angel. But basically, it is very, very virulent, and it will just wipe out pretty much everything very quickly. And that's what happened. So these aren't fish to me. These are pets. I take this very personally. And I literally, as I said, I'm almost, it's stupid because have you ever been emotional while doing a live stream with someone? As I said, this isn't the best place to get it out probably, but this is the first time I've spoken about it really. Yeah. So you need to convince me to stay in the hobby, basically. So
you've lost a few fish, basically. This was everything. So how did it happen? Did it just kind of all come through? Because
it happened very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I noticed, as I said, the patch on the Starkey damsel. The first one that actually went was the what's the one you like? The gold flake was the first one that went.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
And I didn't. So I put lanthanum chloride in the tank, and lanthanum chloride in a little 5 micron sock, but it can make some fish like not overly happy.
Yeah.
And I put lanthanum chloride in the tank, and very quickly, some of the angels started coughing. And
okay, that's weird.
Yeah, as in to go, I'm not happy. Like it's a breathing thing. That's why. Now I didn't pour it directly in the tank. I put it in a 5 micron sock in the Red Sea roller mat, and then also next to the skimmer, so it shouldn't have been an issue. And for whatever reason, there was a reaction with the gold flake and the majestic first, and I assumed that was what the problem was, and then I very quickly realized when I started to look much closer that wasn't what it does attack the gill. So it's entirely possible that would have made the situation worse, but it wasn't the lanthanum chloride that did it. And then, as I said, literally one bit by bit, I've caught them, dipping everything. The fish, like, nothing works. It's just like, it is brutal. It is absolutely fucking brutal, if I'm honest.
So they just sort of drop like flies, basically, and
yeah, they at first basically they get some slime on them, then they like within an hour or so they can't see properly, and then that's it. Basically, that's it's done.
Because by that stage, there's nothing you can do, is there?
No, well, I tried.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
it's also what I realized, because I had to get it for koi carp. Formalin is one of the things that can help with Brucknella, but you can't buy it in the UK easily. It's not like you can't buy it in its raw form. You need it to be 37% formula formaldehyde, I think is how it's pronounced, and then 10 to 15% ethanol is the one you need. They do it for koi carp, but they don't do it for marine fish.
Yeah.
Now, Kane's asking when is the next update video for the angelfish. I actually have an update for the angelfish where they're all alive that was finished a couple of days ago.
You've mentioned that last week, yeah.
Yeah. And now that is a video that no one will ever see because there's literally no point. It's I might take elements of it because obviously I've done the automated water changes in that system, but it's I need a break, I think, to step back, as I said, it's funny because this is literally a lot of the time people come to me and they're at the very end. They've had enough. And I'm there going, right, let's give you a kick up the arse. This isn't as bad as you think it is. We can do this together. We'll get it and to try and listen to my own advice, I now realize it's much harder than you think it is.
But I mean, when you're in a problem like this and you've had a disaster like this, it just feels. I've been there as well. I've had fish die of white spot. I've had all sorts of issues just with dramatic consequences, losing loads of corals, all these sorts of things.
Yeah,
and you feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You do want to give up, but there's not really anything you can say at the moment. Like, this has only happened. This is fresh. There's nothing really I can say to you.
The last one died this morning. It's
But you've just got to leave it and see how you feel in a week's time. Basically, there's nothing you can do at the moment.
As I said, it's difficult for me to. I know what I have to do going forward. You have to leave the tank empty for 6 weeks. It's difficult for me because it's not like I can go, right, I'm done. I'm selling the tank. That's it. And as I said, the coral farm, that's the one thing I'm grateful for. So sometimes I'll put a new. If I need somewhere to store a fish, I'll put a fish in the coral farm or something. None of these fish ever were in the coral farm. And if it had, as in I have a feeling it's come from the clownfish, I reckon. I got a new clownfish. And the fish will be dropping like flies in exactly the same way. So I'm so glad that I didn't do that this time because there's like 100 fish in the coral farm and it would have been much worse.
What's in the tank apart from the rock? You got corals in there?
There's 2 corals in there. Oh no, 3. There's 3 milliporas, which ironically are doing brilliantly.
Is there any reason though you wouldn't just drain the tank and just step away and leave it for whatever, rather than have it there as like
because look, this is a project and I have to prove to people. I have to prove to people that look, we will go through tough times. We all do. And although it feels like I want to give up, I said I literally can't because of the company. So it's what I have to do is go, right, let's put this in perspective. I have a beautiful coral farm which is doing brilliantly. And I have one of the best jobs in the world where I get to do what I love. And then on the other hand, I have had this issue. There are things I can do to that tank still. I can leave it empty, but I can actually put corals in it. So if I leave it empty for 6 weeks, but fill it with corals, it will still potentially keep that love going. But if I just let it sit there and get covered in algae, that will be that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no idea about Brook or any real fish diseases in any detail, but it's 6 weeks. That sounds like a short time scale.
That's what
is that all it takes?
apparently that's what Humblefish, and I don't know if you've seen Humblefish.
Yeah,
that's what he says.
He knows his stuff.
Yeah, he's very, very good, but it's just very hard to describe that feeling of, it's literally like being gutted. Like not literally, but you know what you mean. You know that feeling where you feel it in your stomach and you go like, and you just go, what am I like? What can I do? So, and remember, for us, it is incredibly public. Like anyone else, if there's if this happened to anyone else, they'd leave it for 6 weeks, go back to their fish shop, put another fish in. No one thinks I have to do this. This is almost practice for my own channel. I have to go, look, I am responsible for this, and I screwed up, and it's not easy to do that. So, but I want, as I said, I don't want sympathy from people. What I do want them to know is that you very rarely see this side where it's this bad from people, especially on the internet, because everyone wants to be like how amazing it is.
Yeah. This is very
Whereas this is like very raw emotions for me. And so if you're there at this moment, like not you, but anyone who's there at this moment, or if anyone has like experiences this in the future, whether it's to do with your fish or all your corals die or anything, you're not alone, basically, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. So,
because it happens.
Yeah, it happens, and that's that. I have to basically just dust. Like, what do they call you? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just keep going. So.
Yeah, I think just a bit of time away. You've obviously got the coral farm you've still got to look after, but I think carrying on with something when you're like this is it's better not to do it. Just have some time away from it. But
I have expectations from obviously the people who watch the channel, and I also have expectations from the companies that have been kind enough to support the channel.
Yeah, but is anyone who's watching or is Waterbox going to say
no
bloody hell, this is ridiculous, get on with it?
No one, literally. The funny thing is, most of the things that we think we worry about, no one cares about but us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true. Like I'm sure when you walk out the house, you wonder like, well, there you go. Let's get back into the fun. When you wonder, how good your hairstyle is that day, but no one else wonders how good your hairstyle is that day. So you know what I mean? Like you'll have your missus would have gone, oh, do I look good in this dress? But no one else would have noticed.
Yeah.
Probably.
The answer is yes.
Yes, always say yes. Trust me.
Yeah.
So,
and this is. I've got to ask this question, but I think it's probably a few weeks too early. You don't quarantine?
No.
Do you think you would quarantine from now on?
So I've not had an issue for 12 years without quarantining. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I haven't learned my lesson. It's like as I was driving back here, because obviously I've only just done. Obviously we have a chat before, don't we? But I was thinking it's basically not quarantine. It's like Russian roulette, and it's fine until it's not fine.
Yeah.
Now, as I said, 12 years and there are literally hundreds of fish in the coral farm, and I haven't had a problem. But when you do have a problem, it's a real problem, and it can be. I reckon there is no doubt about this. This will be the end of other people's time in the hobby. There is no doubt about it.
What do you mean if it happened to other people?
Yeah. I think that if they had a tank that they've been running for 6 months, they put something in that killed everything, then they'll go, I've had enough. I'm done.
Yeah, especially if you're new in the hobby and you haven't had years of successes to look back on. If this is your only experience is bad, yeah.
Now I am going back to your question. I buy fish from a place where I know that they use copper. I know they use copper in the tanks. Now, copper actually doesn't work on Brooklella, so I've learned something. So it's not like I'm just casually buying things from all over the place. I'm quite selective about where I will buy things.
But even then, loads of shops use copper and various treatments, but it's and people often talk about quarantine, and some shops will say, "Oh, we quarantine." Yeah. But quarantine doesn't mean one thing. There is no single definition. This is what quarantine is. And with copper, loads of shops use copper.
Yeah.
But it might suppress some of this. It's not like if you buy from a shop that uses copper, therefore you'll be fine.
Of course. So, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
So, but as I said, so I'm quite like if there's a sick fish in any of the tanks in any shop, then I will not buy anything from any of those tanks in that shop ever. Not ever, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a tank 4 tanks away or something like that. It's in the same system. And it's as I said, I've done relatively well. I do think that there's probably some stages that you can do without going fully into it, which are relatively easy.
Yeah.
I'm not I haven't all of a sudden gone, and I'm being honest with you, going, I'm going to quarantine everything. That's a very easy thing for me to say, and no one would ever know if I did it. I think that BRS did some brilliant videos where there's some things there's some very basic things you can do, certain dips and freshwater dips for flukes and things, which I do that anyway, but not on everything. On things which are prone to flukes, like angelfish, I did. So I'm doing some of it, and there's some dips that you can do. Would I go the full way where I have a full extra system? I already have all these tanks. Do you see what I mean? It's another system to look after. So now people might be thinking, well, I don't feel sorry for him anymore because he's not learned his lesson. But I would rather just be honest with you.
No, and the knee-jerk reaction when you've been in that situation is, yeah, look, I'm going to quarantine from now on. God, I wish I always had done. But actually, I don't think that should necessarily be the answer.
I have had fish die in quarantine, and I did it previously. I did quarantine previously. I wouldn't have been the extent that people do now. This was 14 years ago. But it's I definitely had fish. One of the things I didn't realize are happening at the time, this is what you learn. I had 10 chromis, and I put them all in this little quarantine box. And I was like, why are they dying one at a time? Thinking that it was some disease or something was getting them. And the reality was they were killing each other because they were in a space that was too small. And if they'd gone into the main tank, the chances are they wouldn't necessarily be 100% better, fine, but they might be better than if they were in a small tank. So it's just what I do think is I might not go very heavy on fish anymore for this tank. I think I will have I've still got obviously the king eye. The king eye never went in, thank God for that. Oh God. But some of the fish I'd had for years, some of the fish that went in there I'd had for years and years. I'm very happy. So I've got a purple tang, which I've mentioned loads of times. I've had for 15 years. I was going to put that in because you know how you put all tangs in at the same time to like, so there's no, it's the easiest way to not have too much aggression, while also putting them in acclimation boxes. And I'm glad I didn't put her in because that would have been a terrible idea as well. So as I said, but I have loads of fish in the coral farm as well. I can easily stock that tank with fish from the coral farm without having to. They've been in there for 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, 15 years.
You could go back to the original plan as well. You could have, because the original plan was you'd have your one angelfish, which could be your king eye. You could have that, and then just other normal fish. Yeah, wrasses, tangs, etc.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I did
lower risk.
It's lower risk, and like the king eye doesn't eat coral. I've had a few different corals with it so far. It will eat some things, but the ones I've had, whereas the blueface definitely ate coral. But I was looking forward to. You can see I'm almost like I'm just a bit defeated at the moment. I was looking forward to the challenge. I was looking forward to going. Let's just see what happens. And now I'm going. I just want to have a nice tank. I don't want to challenge. I just want it to be in there, easy. Don't like just. But, you know what is really like interesting? The Millipora, which I put in there just to see if the angelfish would eat them, are doing amazing. They're growing really fast. So
what were they, little 1-inch frags or like?
They were these little tiny frags, and they've now grown onto the frag plugs. Like, and I literally put them in there. They arrived the day before from Indonesia. I cut some fingers off and put them straight in there. I literally just wanted to see, will the angelfish peck at SPS corals? And the blueface did, but it didn't destroy them.
Okay.
And so they were sort of like sacrificial SPS basically just to try it, and they're doing bloody brilliant. so I have a little bit of joy from that I have to take away from it, but as I said, it's just I'm not joking, and I'm not being like there would have been 4 days in 15 years where I will have got. I go those days I remember. Like I remember those days where I've had like a problem, or even the day I moved my tank, my 1,000-litre tank. I remember that forever. But there's 4 very significant days. This is one of them now, because it's like you just feel helpless.
Will you make a video about this, do you think?
I will not make a video of all the dead fish. I won't. Like I didn't film it. I don't want to film it.
No.
And no one wants to see that either. But I will tell people. I have to. Like it's it's like this is the tank's going fine, and then just nothing. So I have to say something. But I will probably literally I'll just sit down like this and go, look, I want to have a conversation with you. This is what happened. It didn't go well. I accept full responsibility for this. I didn't quarantine the fish. I definitely misdiagnosed them. At first, I've never had it before. And would you have known that Brucknella shows off differently in different fish?
I don't know anything about most diseases, to be fair.
Well, trust me, I'm going to tell you this right now. You want to learn, even if you literally the basic ones, you know about white spot, but things like velvet and everything like that, you want to know, because so you can deal with them immediately if you need to. The
problem with that is, and one of the reasons I don't know anything, I've researched it before.
Yeah,
probably years ago, and I might have even researched into it in quite a lot of detail. But you never actually take anything in, until you're experiencing it. So actually, there'd be no point me learning about it now, because you only absorb it when you're there. But yeah, well, I mean,
Reef King has just made a very good comment. He said, basically going, "You wanted a challenge. The challenge is working." And now I'm going, I don't want a challenge. So it wasn't the challenge I expected. I have wanted to have an angelfish tank for years, and I loved every minute of it. I absolutely loved every minute. I would sit and watch them for hours, because angelfish are very different to other fish. They have a different personality to a clownfish, or it's almost like they know what's going on. It sounds stupid. They're more intelligent, definitely, than other fish. Wrasse sort of like swim around, don't they? Whereas angels, they'll like look at you while they'll just sit there and stare at you. And this might sound stupid, but I promise you, they definitely are very different to other fish. And I have loved every single minute of it. And I didn't expect to, if I'm honest. I would just thought it would be the same as any other tank. So that's why this has been so hard.
Yeah. Do you think you took it too quick?
See, someone mentioned this. This has become an interview, isn't it?
That's not a leading question. I don't have an opinion either way. I'm just wondering.
So someone actually commented that on my post, and I was going to reply, and I actually chose not to, because I would have been responding out of not like
emotion.
It was, but it wouldn't have been an angry thing.
No.
So do I think I took it too quickly? There is some element that and you know this, when you have a YouTube channel, you want to make things interesting and make the tank progress and things like that. There is definitely some element of that. The fish didn't die of a water quality issue. If the tank was 6 months old or 10 years old and I'd done the same thing would have happened. So do I think I took it too quick? I can see why people might think that. And if the fish had died from ammonia, I would say yes.
Yeah.
But I actually tested ammonia yesterday for the first time in ages to go, is this what the problem, like, is this why they're dying? Yeah. And it's 0.
So that's not what I was talking about. I mean, in terms of, and actually you didn't add, I think probably the answer is no, you didn't add that many fish, but you added quite a few fish in a relatively small space of time.
Yeah.
So if you'd have gone a little bit slower, and I wouldn't have gone slower, by the way, even knowing this, if you'd have gone a bit slower, maybe, I think probably you still have had the same issue. It's just that there would have been less impact, I guess.
If I'd gone slower, and I hadn't, it's very simple. So at the same time I put those fish in, I also put the 3 tangs in. If I'd put 1 tang in, I'd have 1 dead tang rather than 3.
Yeah, exactly.
But logic tells you to put the 3 tangs in together, because then there's what tangs are like.
It's the best time.
Yeah. So I did what I thought was right, but it obviously it didn't work out. And the clownfish as well were like this. The male
Tiny.
clownfish is tiny. So to see anything on that.
Yeah, See, this is the thing that I don't quarantine as most people will know. And I don't necessarily say you absolutely shouldn't. I think you should, people should learn about the pros and cons and make their own mind up. But I don't. But one of the things I do is I inspect the fish and I look closely.
Oh, me too, definitely.
Yeah, but even then, and actually, this one slipped through my net. I bought a Great Barrier Reef blenny. I can't remember what they're called, like a little blenny, a few years ago, and it eventually died. And I posted a macro photo, so a real zoomed up, close up photo on Instagram. And Marine Depot, so this is how long ago it was. Marine Depot reposted it and said photo from Reef Dork or whatever. And a few people started saying, it's got white spot. And I was like, no, it hasn't. And I had a closer look. I was like, oh God, you're right. And you can see these tiny little spots. And that fish had been in my tank for months and I hadn't noticed. And there are times when, especially when the fish are small, even if you look, and that was magnified, even if you look then, you can't spot it.
I know. I don't know if I take it more personally than other people do. I don't know. I just, as I said, this was like, for me, I was done yesterday evening. And as I said, the last one was this morning. I was like, when you just want to take a hammer to your tank. I was literally like, I caught them, as I said, I was catching them, put them in, like, no, did not. It just, as I said, there's not a lot else to say really than that. And I don't want to, it's interesting because I genuinely thought that I would be absolutely hammered by people with this, because I don't quarantine my fish. And as I said, neither do you. Let's just bring you in on this. And I thought that I would have a lot more people go, this is your own fault. But I actually there was an outpour of people like on Instagram and Facebook that go, actually, like, we're just sorry it happened to you. We're like, we're not here to, there's no pitchforks and torches. We're literally just to go, look, it happens to us, happens to you. Someone said, I can't remember what they wrote, exactly what they wrote, but they literally said I was going to say literally if I can't remember, but something along the lines of like, you showing this shows other people, like how many other people have you helped from posting this, if you see what I mean. But yeah, that, as I said, that wasn't even what it was either. I'm not even sure why I did it. I did it at like 10 o'clock last night, but I think I just wanted to go, I've had enough. There you go. So
I mean, I'll ask you more questions in a month or so's time. The only other thing I was thinking is, so if Brooklynella is AKA clownfish disease, right?
Yeah.
Would you get clownfish again?
There's clownfish in all of the other tanks. Everyone has clownfish. Loads of people have clownfish. I actually don't like clownfish, so I actually don't think I'd put them in that tank again anyway. But not because I was worried about the the opinionated reef has just been banned. Was that you?
I've just put him in a timeout, so I've just blocked his.
I didn't see what he'd written, so but...
doesn't matter.
Okay, fine. But the so would I get clownfish again? I actually don't like clownfish. I actually think clownfish look odd in a tank that doesn't have an enemy, because they're normally just like hanging around somewhere. So you have clownfish, don't you?
I do. So my first ever tank, this is really common. They hang up by the overflow box, so the outlet from where the sump water comes back in. And the first time I got them, I was like, "What the hell are they doing? Like trying to like feed the other side of the tank, get them away?" But it's just what they do. They find something that it's like, "Oh, that must be an anemone. Oh yeah, I'll host that." So
I think clowns look amazing in anemones. They look amazing in anemones. They like when they're like wiggling and dancing and things like that. But in a tank without an anemone, for me, it looks a bit unnatural now. I'd rather have just a fish that swims around rather than a fish that hangs out in the corner doing this.
Yeah.
They were all right. It was fun. They were quite funny because they were like an odd couple where every so often the female would go and tell the male off, And then the male would go off and hide for a little bit and then come back, and then they'd be friends again for a while. But
were you planning on getting an anemone?
Anemones actually can go with angelfish. So that was actually going to be like a
I see, as in they won't eat them. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know I've seen tanks with anemones with angelfish that don't eat them. But I haven't seen so I was considering it, but I've had bubble tips with clownfish before, and they don't Percula and Ocellaris generally. That some of them will do it, but a lot of them just don't know what that is, because that isn't the anemone that they would live in the wild. They live in a different type of anemone to a bubble tip. So I believe if you want a clownfish to go in a bubble tip, it's the pink skunk clowns are the ones that are naturally in those. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, like if you got more questions, I am more than willing. Look, me, I'm always up front. I'm more than willing to answer them. And if you don't, then as I said, I don't want to depress anyone else. But just because, look, it's, as I said, it's done now. What more is there to say?
I think I'll probably have more questions for you when the dust has settled a bit, but there's not much else to say at the moment. It's just kind of it's a bit crap.
Yeah,
and you can reflect a bit more in weeks' time, can't you?
Yeah. So anyway, enough about me moaning. What has happened with your week of reef dig? Hopefully nothing eventful.
It feels a little bit odd to talk about this now.
Oh, yours has been wonderful. Let me guess.
No, just general standard week in reefing. So I've started buying more and more LPS corals, as I've said recently. And you'll remember a few months ago we had a live stream where we both said that we don't get torches. Like why are people so obsessed, and why do people pay £1,000 a head of torches?
Yeah. And
so yesterday I bought that.
Oh, nice. What sort of torch is it? Some sort of fancy one?
It's called a Holy Grail torch, although you ask 100 people, you'll get 100 different names.
Yeah.
But it was, so I went into a local fish shop, Aquatic Emporium, on the weekend, and then I found another one, and they had one in there. It was a little bit expensive, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then I found one in another foot shop that was a little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a sign.
How much was it?
So, 200 quid.
200. I got one for 120.
No,
I don't really. I just wanted to bring you down to my level.
Yeah.
So.
But to be fair, so I've seen that kind of one. I don't know if it was that exact one. It's a really nice green and yellow, kind of goldy yellow, I think I would say, but greeny, goldy, yellowy torch coral. And that is the one that I don't know, 6 months, a year ago, I went looking for one that was just like that, and I found them quite regularly, but they were about 1,000 quid a head.
Yeah.
Or 1,000 quid for 2 heads or whatever. It's like, and that was just absolutely ridiculous. There was no way I was paying that.
Yeah. Cool.
But now I feel like that's 200 quid. That's still a lot of money, but that's a much more sensible price.
It's probably the same coral that just hasn't sold and has come down in price over the years.
Maybe, yeah. And also I sold a few corals. I've sold a few frags, so it's basically free. Yeah, although
you're the UK's #1 coral selling website, aren't you?
Number 3, right?
Number 3.
There was a new number 1, wasn't there?
Oh, that's true. Yes, yeah. Because
I can't remember what it's called.
I can't remember what it was called, but someone literally just wrote on their website, the UK's #1 coral selling website. So I thought, well, if it says it, then it obviously that must be true.
There you go. And the other thing was that I bought a new pump for my Tunzi ATO. Yeah. I don't hate the Tunzi ATO, but I never got on with the pump because it's so noisy. There was one stage when I had 3 of them. One broke. But the other 2 I've had running for ages, and when I had them all 3 running, they made different levels of noise. So one was really noisy.
Yeah.
The second one was pretty noisy, and the third one was a tiny bit less noisy, but still far too loud. And there are certain things you can do to make them quieter. You can wrap them in silicone. You can turn them upside down so it gets rid of all the air bubbles and all this.
You can drill a hole in the wall and put them out the back.
Exactly. You can put it.
I can't hear mine at all anymore.
But ultimately, it's just a loud pump. It's just a noisy pump. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I like that I've got a loud. I like that it's loud because I can hear it. I know it's reassuring to know it's working." And I am completely on board with that. It's just that I don't need 400 decibels of noise.
Yeah,
like I just need. If I just hear the trickling, I'm like wicked. And that I get. I agree. That's reassuring.
Yeah.
But it's too noisy, and it should never be that noisy in the first place. Maybe it was designed to go in basements. I don't know. But anyway. they've now brought out a new one, which I bought 60 quid, Tunzi Hijet it's called.
Yeah.
I made a video on the Reef Dork Extra channel.
Oh yeah, of course I saw it.
Oh really? The second, no, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
I was going to say. So it is so much quieter. So much quieter. It's still not silent. You can still hear it like go, but it's completely acceptable level of noise now.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just acceptable because I'm used to a really noisy one, but it's just so much better.
Yeah, well, I think there's some things which I think definitely change your experience with a tank. I think that noise is definitely one of them. If like I want all my tanks to be as quiet as possible. Because not only do they bother you, they'll bother other people in the house as well. So your missus might be sitting on the sofa watching TV, hearing every so often. Yeah. So she might not say anything, but it's
might not even notice it because sometimes you zone out, and then suddenly you're like,
yeah.
But so also actually the other thing I've done with noise is I've got a skimmer on my second tank, my water box LPS tank, 2 foot cube basically, and the skimmer it's been in there. It's a Deltec 400i, so it's rated for I think 400 plus liters, or maybe 200 to 400, whatever. The tank only holds about 150 liters, and I've only got I think 6 fish in there, 2, 4, 6, 6. So not a lot of bioload. I don't feed a massive amount, and it's too big, and it's never really been very effective. Like I clean the skimmer head every 3 or 4 months at best, and there's some crap on it, but not a massive amount.
Yeah.
And I've always thought it's probably not the right skimmer for that tank. It would be fantastic skimmer in a bigger tank, but in that tank, it doesn't suit it.
Yeah.
And so it buzzes a tiny bit. It's one of the quieter skimmers you'll get, but it still makes some noise. On my main tank, I wouldn't even notice it. But in this room, this is my quiet room where I work day to day. You've seen it, and it has to be silent. So any noise, it's like, so I'm going to be swapping that out, and I'm going to be using a Refugium instead.
Yeah. Okay, it's interesting.
And this is ironic on the topic of today's live stream, which is do we overcomplicate things?
Yes, I can finally get onto it.
but actually, so I think it's what I want on that tank for filtration is something to deal with nitrates and something to deal with phosphates. And actually, if this isn't just me saying the skimmer isn't dark enough and it's too loud, my nitrates, they're not so high that it's a problem, but the average over the last 6 months nitrates have been about 19 parts per million.
Okay.
And my phosphate has been an average of about 0.4 parts per million. So my filtration, and that doesn't bother me. Those levels are fine. But the phosphate bothers me, to be fair, because that's been too high. She's got up to above 0.9 recently, higher than my phosphate checker can read.
Wow.
Yeah. So I need to do something, and I think if I swap out the skimmer for a Refugium, that will do something for phosphates more than the skimmer. Not a lot, and in my experience, Refugiums don't really do much for phosphates, but they'll do something. It'll probably get the nitrates down, not too low that it's a problem, but it will reduce them as well. And it'll be quieter. So all in all,
I look forward to seeing the update on your channel now that I watch every episode. Not the Reef Dork Extra one though. No, that's too many channels for me to watch.
Well, that is the only place I would make such an update. So
I see. Not good enough for the main one.
Exactly, it's a small update, but
I'll be interested to see the effect of having no protein skip. That's just genuinely true. I'd be interested to see the effect of having no protein skip and having having a Refugium instead, because some people like swear by them. So
that's how I started the tank. I started it for the first 6 months. There was no skimmer.
It will do more for the phosphate, I think, than you probably think.
Maybe.
Then again,
I've had lots of Refugiums and
they don't.
But it'll do better. My phosphate won't be as high as it is now. That's for sure. And but I'll still have to run a phosphate reactor, which I will do, and that's fine. I've got no problem with that.
Yeah.
I'll still use Rowaphos, but without a skimmer. So the tank behind me, the Fluval Evo, the only filtration in there. I do put some Rowaphos in there from time to time, but the only filtration is a sponge, literally a piece of sponge that I cut up. I put in, and I throw away whenever I can be bothered. Every once a week, twice a week, maybe. That's it.
Well, there you go.
And it's doing well.
Every tank, even one that's 1,000 liters, that's all you need. A tiny piece of sponge.
Exactly.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is you don't necessarily need a skimmer. On smaller tanks, 150 liters is probably big enough that I would say it's worth having a skimmer. 100 litres or below, I don't think I'd bother, because the other thing I do for filtration on the fluvial is water changes. Yeah. It's really easy. My parameters were, my phosphate was really high on that a few weeks ago. So I just did like a 70% water change.
It's easy on small tanks.
So, exactly. So, but 150 litres is probably a tiny bit big for no skimmer, but I think it'll be fine. So I'm going to take it offline, see how the what's it called, Cheeto does better. And I've got a couple of my corals really unhappy with high phosphate. Really unhappy. They're
I can imagine. I'm surprised you put the torch in there.
And to be fair, most corals are absolutely fine. I put a Monty in there and it didn't like it. I put a few SPS in there like that, and they didn't like it. But the LPS are fine, actually.
The SPS, did they turn brown? I'm assuming.
They were just dying, like losing flesh, and I've moved them to my main tank now, and they're recovering very, very slowly. But they already look better. But my LPS are absolutely fine, so I don't really care. I don't have, for the most part, I need to have this number in mind. I'm not chasing numbers as such, but I am, to a point, I'm chasing to get
anything below 0.9.
Exactly. And I think if I get it to 0.1 or whatever, 0.2 even as an average, I'm fine with that. It's assuming I don't have any further problems with my corals, because if I'm still having problems, then I've got to do something else. But I think that will probably help.
Jay's just made me laugh. I just saw the comment he put about how he's a tight Yorkshire man, where he wouldn't spend another £60 on the pump, even though it comes on. I have a noisy
version of the pump, but it only comes on for 3 to 5 seconds once per hour.
I'm the opposite to you. I'm willing to drill a hole and buy a very expensive tank just to avoid that.
Yeah. I bet your neighbours in the middle of the night with the windows open at the moment, like, what's that noise?
Yeah, this is every so often. Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. No, you wouldn't be able to hear it. You can't hear it through the thing.
60 quid is a lot of money for
it would make you cry how much those tanks cost.
What tanks?
The tanks I put outside, so I didn't have to hear it.
I see. Yeah. No, but I just mean for an upgraded pump for your auto top off. 60 quid's a lot of money. Fair,
no, I know what you mean.
But anyway, it is worth it in this particular room. But there you go. And so that's our week in reefing.
Let's
put it behind us. Vibes. We'll move on. And we'll move on to next. We're going to do member questions and stuff from the Facebook page. The Facebook page in particular is growing already. It's almost at 500 people there already. It is brilliant. I just love that it's like a
I didn't expect it, and I will like have. So I don't go on Facebook ever. I post things for the company, but I don't ever go on it. And even I will occasionally have a little peruse of what's going on. There are some really nice tanks on there. There are some genuinely.
I'll show you one today.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I wonder it'd be interesting if it's the one that I saw, because I thought that is definitely worth it.
But everybody, so that like I put one rule on there, because you can put rules on a group. I put one rule and it's be nice.
I didn't know I had to stick to that.
I know, yeah. But to be fair, I don't think I even needed to say that, because people are nice in the hobby, and that little Facebook community is just everybody. People join and they share a photo of their tank or their favorite coral or whatever, and they're just really enthusiastic about it. And loads of people are piling in, going, "That's awesome! What is it?" It's just a nice place to hang out with fellow nerds.
It's sort of a different vibe to other pages. I don't know what, for whatever reason. I actually wonder if it's because, you know how normally you have no idea who the moderators are, so you don't really care what whereas I think I genuinely think people are more respectful, not because of us, but just because they go, well, maybe it's because of us. Like, You've got a connection though. I guess that's I'd not really thought about that, but like with a normal Facebook group, you're just like, oh, this is about LPS corals, or this is about clownfish or whatever. Yeah. And that's why you're going on there. Whereas maybe you're joining this because it's like, oh, I watched this dickhead's videos. Yeah. Which one of us were you referring to?
These dickheads. Videos.
Both of us.
But the other, the other thing is a small group.
Yeah.
And so if there were 10,000 people, there's more chance of But anyway, whatever. But either way, and one thing Michael Peachy says is your channel attracts people that care, and that reflects on the group. Well, good. I think actually the hobby attracts people like that for almost exclusively. And I've said this a few times. I've got a motorbike channel as well. Yeah. What's it called? Average Biker. I've made a few videos on there.
Trying to get a few more subs.
If I post something that's a bit controversial on this channel, even if I'm explaining it and being normal, I might get a few people saying I don't agree with that, and that's about it. If I post something even remotely controversial on the motorbike channel, I get absolutely pilloried. It's just like people pile in, like personal comments immediately, swearing, rude, aggressive, everything. So the hobby is the community in the hobby generally is just
that's also me.
Caring people. This is true, but it attracts that kind of people, I think. But anyway, so the point is this. All right, so we'll come on to that in a sec. Firstly, membership questions. First one is from Tom, who says 2 questions here. Maybe ironic given the topic, i.e. overcomplicating things. Tom, you're not overcomplicating it. Don't worry about that. But do you have any suggestions for RODI units? Brand, amount of stages, water produced per day? And then there's a second question. So first off, Ryan, got any recommendations for RODI units?
I use the D&D one, which not sponsored, just to clarify. I've actually been using it for years. And I also have, in addition to that, I have 3 extra chambers for DI resin. Yeah. So not every RO unit will come with a chamber for DI resin. Well, because I'm lazy, I got 3 chambers, so I only have to fill it up once. Well, I take them all down. It lasts 3 times as long, basically.
Okay.
So that's that. And you can put them outside, although I wouldn't advise it because they freeze in the winter, and then I have actually had it. It doesn't happen very often, but I have had it where it's cracked the plastic. And the other thing is, to get efficient RO water, you need to have a pump. It has to have a certain pressure going through it, and the pump makes a massive difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
So the one I have is by Viair.
Yeah,
and I'll put it on screen. Again, I paid for it. It was ridiculously expensive. It's this one on the left, 400 quid it was.
Yeah.
400 gallons per day. The one on the right is the RO200, which is the junior version.
Yeah.
And it produces 200 gallons per day. It just means it's got 1 less membrane and 1 less pump.
Yeah.
But those are both, so they're 300 and 400 pounds. So they're very expensive, but they produce water very fast. And the one I have has 2 membranes, which is great. So that means that you waste less water. And I'm just about to go on a meter because they caught up with me.
They finally got you, did they?
Yeah, I know. And it also has 2 carbon block stages, which is really important because supposedly they can get used up quickly. So the second one catches anything that it releases. And I think from the BRS videos, this might be wrong, but fact check it. But I think stuff that goes through the carbon block won't necessarily get caught by DI resin. Yeah. And so your TDS still might read 0, but there might be some kind of thing. So anyway, 2 carbon block stages, and then I have 2 DI pods, the proper full-size DI pods.
Yeah.
And I use color change mixed bed DI resin. So when one is exhausted, I replace it, move the other one across, and then put the new one in. So there's always fresh DI resin.
Also worth having an inline TDS meter is very useful.
Yes, absolutely.
Like it makes a massive. If you've got a little pen, and you lose it, you got to go find it. Trust me, an inline one that don't cost a lot of money is well worth having. Yeah,
pressure gauge.
Shut-off pressure gauge is one, and a shut-off valve. So you can add all these things to, like, you can buy the basic one. And then when you add it gets quite expensive when you start to add the pump and the pressure gauge and the TDS meter. But trust me, especially the shutoff valve, like, it's so worth it.
So mine has a high pressure shutoff and a low pressure shutoff. I couldn't tell you what each do, but basically, if it detects that it's if you turn the tap off, like the outlet tap, it will recognize that it's blocked and it will turn itself off. And also, I have a marriage saver. What's it called? The little infrared sensors, little water sensors. So, but yeah, it's very, very good. It's expensive, but basically, as many stages as you can do. Ideally, I would have at least two DI resin stages, and if you can have 2 of everything. So 2 of the foam pad filters, what they call them, like the pre-filters.
Yeah.
2 carbon blocks and 2 membranes. Then that's
awesome. All right, money bags.
I know, exactly. It gets expensive, but a simple.
The average person could get away with the smaller one that you showed a minute ago. You know, the cheaper one.
Yeah.
With the average tank, you could get away with that probably.
Yeah, you could. So you have 1 membrane.
Yeah.
The bigger, the better, because it'll produce water quicker. But it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
if you've got a massive tank, you don't want a 50-gallon per day membrane.
No,
because it won't produce very much water at all. But if you've only got a small tank, if I only had the Fluval Evo, 50 gallons per day is fine, and it's not really gallons per day is irrelevant. What you want, you look at it and it trickles out really slowly. But anyway, so you want one membrane, one carbon block, one pre-filter, one DI resin pod, and a booster pump. That's the bare minimum basically. But that's not overcomplicating it. That is one of the pillars of the hobby.
You need to make sure your water is correct, because that's the most important thing. Like if you, it's most of the challenge is keeping the water correct, basically. Indeed. So,
and you asked about brand doesn't really matter. I think they actually probably all use exactly the same equipment. They just import it and then put their own brand on it, but the brand doesn't really matter. I used Via because I liked that particular one. It had all the kit that I wanted with it, but the DD one is been designed with put together with saltwater aquariums in mind. And there's Osmotics do them. There's various other ones. RO Man, RO World.
You can actually I know with some of them you can use different membranes, so it doesn't have to be the brand that you're looking for. Because I spoke to Charthouse the other day, I ordered something and they couldn't get to me for weeks for some reason, and they went, "Oh, okay, don't worry, we'll just send you this one instead. It's basically the same." I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and it works, so I haven't got a problem with it.
Fair enough. And his second question was about dry live rock. Why is it so hard to come by? Dry. I don't think I've ever seen dry live rock. I've seen wet live rock loads, but dry live rock.
Look at my driveway. It's got loads of dry live rock on it. They used to sell more dry live rock. I think these days people get the dry live rock. They put it in a holding tank, and all of a sudden it becomes wet live rock and a lot more money. But it is, you can usually get it off eBay and places like that.
This is true. Other hobbyists are probably.
So you won't. It's the reason it becomes harder to get hold of in shops is because I think they don't mine for it anymore. The hobby's gone, right, we're not doing this anymore. And you do see live rock come in occasionally. I don't know where it's coming from.
Australia, I think.
Yeah, but you don't. It's usually very expensive, and you don't see it like huge quantities like you used to.
I bought a load. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I bought a load about 2 years ago for my water box, and it was £26 a kilo. So it was very expensive.
Yeah.
And actually, I've now removed almost all of it. So I gave most of it away.
See, we're opposite, I think. Like I prefer to use dry live rock for my tanks.
Why?
As opposed to any man-made rock.
Because it works, or
the best tanks I've ever had use those rocks basically. And what I've realized from doing some of the consultations is there's definitely a consistent thing that comes with turf algae with some rocks. Where, like, I had it, a few other people have had it, where I literally have a customer where he has a tank full of dry rock, and he has I think a couple of pieces of a branded man-made rock, and they're covered in algae, and all the other rock is pristine. Why? How is that even possible? But it is true. Yeah. So there's definitely something about those rocks which algae likes, and a lot of people have actually also said that corals don't grow on them as well for some reason. That's anecdotal, but I just thought the best success I ever had was with dry live rocks, so I'm going with that.
Fair enough. The only thing I don't like about live rock generally is that it's harder to build into nice islands and that sort of stuff. But that's why I started using RR aquascapes, because they make them the way I want.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, just do what I did. Pile it up as rock. Everyone tells you did a shit job.
Exactly. Put it on the internet. But to be fair, I've had high phosphate problems, so maybe that's what's causing it. Yeah,
that is entirely possible.
It definitely, I think it probably was at first. I don't know if it still is now, but whatever. Anyway, it's not causing me. It's not causing the tank any problems. And then James asked a question, but this is really about the subject of the thing. So he asks, keeping it simple often means letting the tank do its thing, but how do you know when to intervene? When is a bit of cyano too much cyano? How do I know when I should be chasing numbers? Do you have any rules to follow before jumping in? We'll come back onto that for the main point of the topic. And the final member question was from Gouldy39, who says, you've mentioned a few times lately about not overfeeding fish. My question is, as a newbie, how do we tell how much food is too much? Very good question. I'm feeding pellets a couple or 3 times a day on top of the frozen mysis for my antheas. Yeah, but never sure how you know how much pellet to feed on top. So the first thing is, I presume that's a reasonably big tank. Oh, actually, I'm not looking for an exact amount for my tank. What more I should be looking for and how to work out for myself as a guide. Love the show. Keep up the great work. So, because people always say, don't feed too much or feed enough that your fish will eat in 2 minutes and all that sort of stuff, which isn't really that useful. But simply, if you've got antheas, you're going to have to feed more than you would do otherwise. Same like my copper band means I have to feed more of a certain type of food than I would otherwise. So it's a sacrifice I have to make. And therefore, my nitrates and phosphates are probably higher than they should be. But the simple answer, I think, is if you're feeding too much, you'll have algae problems or very high nutrients. So you'll know. If your nutrients are nice and low, sensible level, all your corals are fine, and they're not looking like they've got too much, they're not going browning out or whatever, and you've not got hair algae everywhere, then you're not feeding too much.
Yeah. And so what I would normally say to someone if someone asked me this, a fish's stomach is roughly, now this varies from fish to fish, because you get lionfish, which have got massive stomachs, but usually they don't need that much to eat. And it's based on their eye, I think I heard this somewhere, I don't even know if this is true. But a rough estimate for like the average, like a clownfish's stomach is not that much bigger than its eye. So that's roughly how much they need to eat. The problem comes with fish, as you said. Some fish, antheas are one of them, copper bands are another. They're like people. Some people need more food than others. So they probably shouldn't eat more food than others, but some people do eat more food than others. But antheas, I know people where they feed once a day and the antheas are fine. Why? Why are those antheas different to all the other antheas that die if you feed them once a day? But generally speaking, antheas need to be fed quite a few times a day. And if they start dying or looking thin, you'll know.
Yeah, this is true. And that's the thing. The only other thing with it is, if you're short term, everything's fine. That doesn't mean you're out of the woods. It might be that in 6 months' time, because you've been feeding so much, you're then getting a big build up, and then you're having algae problems, and even your nutrients might be 0 or whatever, or really low, but you've got algae everywhere. And at that point, that's the hard point, because you'll probably be thinking, well, I just started feeding coral food this week, so I bet it's that. And the reality is it's because you've been putting in a ton of food for 6 months. And So
something that's interesting with the coral farm is that I was trying to lower the phosphate on one of the tanks, one of the systems, and I was putting the phosphate remover in, and it was just not going down. I was putting the same amount of phosphate remover in, and it literally every time I tested it was almost like I thought the tester was wrong. It was like magic. It was always basically the same number. And then I realized I actually lowered the feeding for that system, and then all of a sudden the phosphate started to plummet. And I realized that I was literally putting in the exact amount of food for the exact, like it was literally, my import was exactly the same as my export. And it wasn't until, so sometimes if you're going, I'm struggling with phosphate or nitrates and things like that, that's something that you should definitely, and the phosphate remover is not working. It might be you're just putting too much input in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For your reactor. Now, if you don't get me wrong, if you keep putting the same amount of food in, but you had 3 reactors full of phosphate remover, it would obviously come down. But sometimes our tanks feel like they're magic, and whether you're doing something, it's just not working, and it's because you're not thinking about it the right way. And that's what happened for me.
Yeah, it's about the balance, I guess. The balance of what your fish will consume, what the nutrients that your corals will consume, because they will, of natural filtration, and what your filtration can keep up with. And getting that balance right is tricky. It's not like feed 1 cube a day and have 1 skimmer. It's like it's just a finger in the air job. But it'll
be interesting to see that now that I've lowered it down, if I start feeding the same amount again, will it stay at that level or will it start climbing? Because in theory, it should stay at that level. But time will tell. I'm not a scientist. So
fair enough. Well, there you go. So those are the member questions. And now we're going to head over to the Facebook page, the Prestige Reef Dork Show Facebook page, which you should join if you are not a member of already, because it's a really nice place. And the first thing is Mark Ruff's photo. And he just joined this week and posted this. This happens all the time. People join and they post a photo of something cool in their tank or something they're proud of, whatever. And this is a glittergunny, quite a nice big glittergunny from the looks of it, with a clownfish living in it, maybe irritating the coral, but maybe not.
Yeah.
But it looks cool.
Well, that's what at least it's not like try and live on the weir. So
yeah, exactly. But I love because clownfish, mine live in my zoas. I've got a little colony of zoas, and they're always buried half in the zoas and swimming around all day. It's just cool. Even though that's not an anemone, it's just cool seeing a clownfish do that sort of thing. So, and that was the first thing I wanted to point out. The second thing was the tank, and yeah, I bet this is the same one. Oh, hang on, my reef.
Oh, like the suspense is killing me.
Thing is, so
for all the people that listen on the podcast, that you need to start coming live, like so we can sit, so you can see what the pictures are.
Yeah, and this is so I'm looking into making it a video podcast because Spotify.
I didn't know you could do that.
Spotify supports it, and I think others do. My current software provider doesn't support it, so I'd need to find a new one. But anyway, for now, you just watch on YouTube if that's what you're after. This is the tank I reckon you looked at.
I think it was. Yeah,
this is Terry Bliss, and this is his tank. And this is quite an established tank, quite big for a start.
Yeah,
and quite grown out as well. For a start, I love his little yellow long-nosed butterfly. Love those fish.
I like the massive colonies. They're not like lazy little frags everywhere. They're like huge pieces.
Everything is massively grown out, probably years old, 5 or 10 years old, maybe. A little bit of Monty's dying happens in all tanks.
I love that how those Monties are placed with the purple growing over the orange, growing over the green. I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, it's cool. Look at all those pyramid butterflies.
Oh yeah, how do you feel about pyramid? How do you feel about pyramid butterflies?
Don't like them.
You don't like them? That's very offensive for Terry.
It's not very offensive.
He obviously loves them. He's got at least 4, maybe 5.
It looks cool. Look cool in that tank. And the yellow long nose, load of tangs, powder blue tank. Ooh. Big bully. I wonder how he gets on in that tank. Big old tank. Lots of fish. So I wonder if he's a good boy. Look at those mushrooms. He's had a lot of mushrooms.
Yeah, that's true.
But just everything is just completely grown out, and it's just.
I'd be interested to know if there's things that he regrets, because like, does he regret those mushrooms? Because we're like going, look, that looks amazing, but is he sitting there going, don't like those mushrooms?
Yeah. I don't like them, if I'm honest.
I actually don't mind tanks that look like that when they're all fully grown in.
Oh, that tank looks wicked, but that one, I don't like the mushrooms. I don't like mushrooms generally.
Yeah, but, I think they have a place in some tanks. I think, I know what you mean. You wouldn't have them in your tank because they would grow all over the SPS and things like that. But
I think they're ugly as well, even just on their own. Just
is there such thing as an ugly coral? Yeah, someone's going to come back in the chat going, have you ever seen ...
I'll walk around your farm and show you something.
Yeah. Oh, mean. No, I only have beautiful corals. It's only the pictures of them that are ugly. Yeah.
And the last thing from Facebook, this was from, I don't need to bring up, but someone posted asking, he said something about, is it just me or do YouTubers and reefers, so not just YouTubers, speak too highly of the Vectra, Ecotech Vectra pump and not talk enough about how noisy it is? And the reason I want to talk about this, not because of the Vectra, I don't think they're that noisy from memory. It's been years since I had one. I can't remember if I found it noisy. I feel like it had a little bit of a whine, but I can't remember any level of detail about it. But the comment was about people too over the top on stuff. So not just YouTubers, but reefers generally as well. And the reason that people go over the top on anything, whether it's a Vectra return pump, Kessels, whatever, Kessels with me because I always big them up because they're amazing. There are various reasons. So for a start, if it's just a normal, a non-YouTuber posting on a forum or a Facebook group, one of those
non-YouTubers.
If it's someone like that posting on a Facebook group or a forum or whatever, then you've bought something, you've spent quite a lot of money on it, you're excited about it, and you want to tell people how awesome it is. So you just talk about the positives, and that's your biases. YouTubers do the same thing for sure. There's no doubt about it. I made a video of Reflow Auto water changer. I bought it myself. I'd had it for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I had no affiliation whatsoever with the company. I had no intention of getting an affiliation with them either. But I made a video saying how awesome it was, and it is. Yeah. But then I watched it back 6 months later, and I was like, there are a couple of downsides actually that I should have mentioned.
That's the problem. Sometimes you don't realize. Not you, everyone doesn't.
Yeah. But this is the whole point, and so that like if there's simple downsides that don't matter, but I want the purpose of that video was part of the reason that I set up the channel was to share things that are awesome, and that water changer is awesome. It makes life so much easier. So I deliberately didn't want to. It's not like I set out thinking must not say anything negative, but I wanted to tell people how awesome it is. So that video wasn't about balance like most of my reviews are. It was just saying, look, this thing is awesome. Go and get one. So not, but anybody does that. So if you post on Facebook or a forum, whatever, lots of people do that. YouTubers have further biases in that they might have some kind of affiliation. So if you've watched the review of a Vectra, it might have been for free, and no matter what anybody says, there's a conflict of interest if you've got something for free, and there'll be some part of you thinking, oh god, I don't want to talk about that it's noisy, or I don't want to talk that it's too big, or so there'll be some part of you, there'll be levels. So some people will just be like, I owe this company, so I'll say whatever they want me to. And at the other end of the scale, there'll be someone who just subconsciously in the back of their mind don't quite want to, be too rude. It doesn't even have to be YouTube; it can be anyone. But there's all sorts of reasons why people don't always express themselves completely. But it's also very difficult to review a product. So try at home. Try posting a review on a forum or a Facebook page or whatever of a piece of equipment you've got. It's really difficult to not just say, I've just bought this light, it's amazing. It's really difficult to step back and say, okay, so these are the things that are good about it. These are the things that are bad. And there are things that you will think are good that other people will think are bad. And there are things that you won't think of. So like with a noisy pump, for example, it might be my hearing in my right ear is slightly worse than my hearing in my left ear. Day to day, I know. Day to day has been like that for years. I had an incident on a plane. Day to day you wouldn't notice, but if I do a hearing test, which I have done for scuba diving, my right ear is less effective. And you might get people who are more extreme than that and have worse hearing. So if a return pump is noisy, they can't hear it. Yeah. Or it might be the rest of their tank is noisy and they can't hear it. So.
Do you remember that time you were colorblind as well?
I'm not colorblind, right? You've got to stop that because people will believe it. They'll be, oh, I heard Alex is colorblind. Anyway. But it's very difficult to make, and there will be things that you think about. I often get comments in my reviews saying, "What about this?" And I'm like, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't give you an example, but just it's so difficult to actually do a proper review that everybody's going to think, I know everything I need to know.
There are a few reviews that I've made where I've literally thought it was a genius idea, and then I think we covered this before, and then. To use it for a while, I then was like, this hasn't quite worked out how I expected. But when you're working with a company, there's an expectation that it's a fast turnaround generally. So you're reviewing the instant. That's why I do unboxings now rather than like this is fantastic. I just show you what it is, and because I don't know if it's going to be a life-changing light or anything. Well, going back to the Vectras, what I will say, in my opinion. I was offered return pumps from other companies for the water box tank, and I bought a Vectra. So that tells you my confidence in it.
Yeah.
When I first put it in, I noticed a very slight noise on full power, and then after running it for a period of time, when it's when it like gets algae and you know what I mean, when it's like not brand new anymore, when it beds in, I don't notice it at all really anymore. And I think also the other thing that people think about, when you only have the return pump on, you're very focused on the return pump. Generally,
no other noise.
The skimmer is way more noisy than any return pump usually.
Yeah, or your power heads. Any pump you turn up to 100% is going to be noisy, no matter what. And that's so I run my pumps between 50 and 75%.
Me too.
My MP40s, for example, I run them up to 80%.
Yeah.
Because anything beyond 80%, it's like, and it's like that's not just limited to them. That's what all pumps are like. There are, you won't find a wave maker that is quite 100%, and even up to 80%. They're a little bit buzzy at times. They're a bit louder than I would like. But any pump you run loud, full is going to be a bit noisy.
Are our expectations too much? Like, because if you think about it, I only know one, like, I think, is it Royal Exclusive, who have like, people say is like a truly silent pump, but that's like £1,000 for something the size of a Vectra. So there's a reason it costs that much money. If you see what I mean. Otherwise, if it was easy to make every pump silent, everyone would just do it. But there must be a cost attached to making it silent as well. So I assume.
The only thing with that is I don't think our expectations are too. Oh, well, it's actually probably, to be fair, sometimes they are. But like if noisy equipment and a Vectra, I don't recall, it's been years, but I don't recall them being unacceptably noisy. Some return pumps are for sure, but I don't think they were. But anyway, but there you can get return pumps that are next to silent. And my Jekod DCP and Jekod MDC in particular, MDC are the Wi-Fi ones. It comes with an app. The app is bloody useless. I can't even get it to work. I've tried everything, but it doesn't. You don't need that. I get the MDC because they're very, very quiet. They're the quietest return pump I've had, and Jekod are reliable. The failure rate, I don't know what it is, but I've had millions of Jekod pumps and they're return pumps, and they're very, very quiet and they're very, very good. So there are it does vary, but although the failure rate is, I would guess, is probably low enough for it to be comparable to the likes of the Vectra. The Vectra is a much better put together pump. If you hold the two side by side, the Vectra feels a lot more solid. When you take it apart, it's better built, better components, all that sort of thing. Whether that matters is up to the person buying it. But I just that one comment, I just thought there's reasons that it's not that you don't get everything you want from a review. But any review you watch, you shouldn't be watching it thinking, and we all do this. You shouldn't be watching it thinking, right, I need you to tell me everything, whether I should buy it. You should be trying to absorb all the information as much as you can. And the only way you're really going to know is when you suck it and see. And sometimes you're going to end up buying something that's a bit noisy, for example. And the only other thing I'll say, because I can see you smirking at something.
I'm laughing at John Wright. Oh, sorry.
The only other thing I'll say is that is if you get that. So I've never made a review of that pump, so he's not talking about me. But if you've watched 2 or 3 reviews from YouTubers saying about the Vectra, for example, or whatever piece of equipment it is, post and ask them. So I've just got one. It's actually quite noisy. Why didn't you mention that, or whatever? Because it might be the reply might be, no, it's completely silent. You want to take that one back, or it might be, oh, actually, you know what? When I turn my skimmer off and I turn my power heads off, I can hear it. There might be 1,000 reasons. So ask them.
Yeah.
And you might get a defensive reply that shows that they're just biased because they've been given it for free. No, but the chances are there'll be an explanation. And ask the question. Yeah. What are you smoking at? John Wright.
Oh yeah, John. Like every so often, someone in the comments will make me smile. No, not that. No, he said you won't hear much when you're 72 like me. I just thought that's so true. It's like having a superpower when it comes to fish tanks.
Yeah. Actually, that's good. You get AC return pumps and stuff.
So much of what I like, if there's something wrong with your tank, usually by sound. First, you walk in, you'll go, something's wrong. And now other people wouldn't necessarily notice it, but you're like, something's definitely wrong.
It'll be a different tone or something noisier or a different trickle or something.
Yes. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? You get so in tune with it, actually. Like I can tell when my reef mat has finished its role, because I'll be able to hear the water pouring out of it, and I can distinguish that from the water coming out of the return pumps, the overflow.
Yeah, true.
We've got Prestige Reef Fish of the Week and Car of the Week. Have you got that for this week, or do we need to move on?
I didn't really, but I just randomly picked some if you want to. I feel like this fish is underappreciated. I'm going to go for a purple firefish. This isn't a fish I've ever owned.
Not purple. Oh, you're not talking about the Hell Freaky. You're talking about the normal purple one.
Just the normal purple one. Generally, people like to have the red ones, or some people like the fancy ones. But I actually prefer the purple ones to the red ones.
I do actually as well.
I'm not sure why I think they are a fish where people occasionally will get one and then it will just disappear. They do jump.
Yeah, they're very, very timid. Very timid.
That's the problem. They have to have a tank that's... I think this is one of those fish where people actually don't give a lot of respect to the fish. So with cod bands, people will go, oh, a cod band needs to have a peaceful environment. I've got to feed it more often. Antheas, they need to be fed more often. Whereas I don't think people give a lot of respect to purple firefish. I think they just put it in and then just go, oh, it disappeared. Where's it gone?
That's it. They're so timid. So I put a hell freaky firefish in my main tank, and it's not an aggressive tank by any stretch. I have a tang, and he's actually pretty peaceful. None of the other fish are aggressive, but they're confident. I've got wrasses that swim around all day, and if there's food that they need to go for, they'll go for it. I've got hawkfish that will hold their own, and this guy, he disappeared after a few months. It was not the right tank for him. I thought that I had peaceful enough fish, but I didn't. Your tank needs to be peaceful as hell.
These are almost fish that I think should go with things like pipefish and dragonettes and those really like puny fish that need to go to the gym. That's what this fish is.
Exactly. And I think even putting these in with clownfish is a bad idea in a small tank.
Yeah,
because clownfish can be right bullies. The only thing I don't like about, and this is one thing I noticed actually, which I think I did know, but it's Gobidae family, which I think is gobies. So it's a type of goby. So. I think I did know that. But anyway, I do prefer this to the standard pipefish. But the thing I don't like about it is it looks a bit like a blow up doll to me. With his lipstick and its shocked look on his face.
I've never ever noticed that, and I will never now not be able to see that.
You can't unsee that. But there you go. So firefish are the blow up doll of the fish world. And I'm just going to pull up a photo side by side so you can see.
Oh, good.
That's a bit of a rude photo. I might not put that off after all. Okay. Whoops.
Send me that photo. Send me that photo later.
You don't want to see it. But we'll move on. So that's the Prestige Reef fish of the week.
Do you remember the person who said that we're not family friendly? Yeah, I now understand their point.
Hey, I've saved. I didn't post the image. It was quite a graphic blow up doll. It was a genuine blow up doll, but it was graphic. Anyway, what's the fish of the week? The coral of the week.
I thought this is not an overly exciting one, but I thought I would go for zoas. And the reason I went for zoas is mainly because I wanted to tell people something. People are making a fundamental error with zoas all the time.
Okay.
Big zoas and little zoas should not be kept together. The little zoas will disappear because the big ones will grow over them and then they'll just shrink and die. So you can put lots of little ones together, or you can put lots of big ones together and keep pallies separate from them, because again, they will grow over them. So I just thought I'd give you a little. They're obviously, everyone knows what zoas are. They, generally speaking, are an easier coral to keep. They're great for beginners. Some are much hardier than others. Don't get me wrong. So there are definitely some which are invasive, and there are some which melt. And sometimes people don't really know the reason why. But for a like, everyone loves them. Even you've got, I don't know if you love them, but you've got them.
Yeah, I love them. Yeah. The right type. Some zoas are boring and I don't like them and they take over.
Yeah.
But the right zoas, I love them. Absolutely.
What's your favorite one?
Oh, I don't know if I've got a few. Scrambled eggs.
Yep,
because
I like those.
Simple, but really bright and yellow.
Yep.
Utter chaos, super bright and orange.
Yeah.
And then things like rastas and what's the other one I got recently? I can't remember. But there's a few like that are particularly nice. Pink
diamonds are one of my favorite because there is no other coral that is that sort of like highlighter pink color. Not that I can think of anyway. It adds a totally different shade when you've got a little collection of them. Yeah, there's no other coral.
Is that those?
Yeah, that luminous pink color. And they have under the blue lights that the mouth is white, so it sort of like really glows. But those are one of my favorites. You're about to go,
No. They look really nice. They look very similar to fake lime chilies.
Similar, but there is you can tell the difference when you
I'm sure you can, but they're purple and green basically is for fake lime chilies. So they probably look a bit pinker, but they look very similar. The reason I mention that is I bought a colony of fake lime chilies on this massive disc, and I was like, wicked, it'll be fantastic. And my God, do they ever grow fast?
What happened to that disc?
Oh, you've got it. In fact,
You sold it to me.
There we go. Yeah, there you go. But because I tried for a start, it was on this big old disc, and I tried stripping off all of the zoas from the edge so it had room to grow. And I sold them. I was like, wicked, done.
Yeah.
And then they grew back like half an hour later. And I turned away to glue them to a frag block, turned back, and they'd grown back. And I was like, what the hell is this? That's something from a horror film. Which is a real shame because they were lovely, really nice. And I wanted the colony, but it was just too much. But the reason I mention those is because there are some, you can never quite predict what zoas will grow rapidly fast and what will grow really slow. So that photo that I showed a minute ago, which I'll pull up again, of this is, I think this is, what's his name? Mad Hatter's Reef. Yeah. This is his zoa colony rock. He's got loads of them and they're all nicely spread out. Yeah. But if you wind forward 6 months,
it won't look like that.
Almost guarantee one of them will have completely taken over.
Yeah.
It might be that that's not the case and it actually still looks like that. But I've tried that a few times. Yeah. And I ended up with laser lemons, which is a lovely zoa again. Yeah. But they took over everything and they wiped out.
I got those from you too.
You've got them. They're really nice. But this is the trouble, and you can never predict it. And even like some people have rasters that grow really fast. Other people have rasters grow really slow. Some people have urticaria. It's not. There's nothing obvious. It's not like when you start digging around, it's like too much light or not enough nutrients or whatever. There's just, I'm sure there is a reason, but I don't know why. So they're unpredictable. But I absolutely love zoas. I think they're wicked.
There you go. So
Sunny D's are very nice.
The Tutti Fruities grow like crazy. That's my the Pandoras grow like I was literally like I had to take some of them out and throw them away because they just grew over everything. If you leave them, they're sneaky zoas. You leave them and you look away, and as you said, sometimes you look back and go, "Oh, how did it get to this stage?"
Exactly.
Like,
but that is, it's 6 months, and the worst is when you're a frag will drop off, like a frag plug will drop off, and you'll be like, "I'll get that another day." And 3 months later, you haven't, and there's a little cluster around it, and they've spread already. Like, it's too late.
I said 2 to 3s. I quite like those, but it's nice when the nice ones grow fast. Not so nice when the not nice ones grow fast. But as pallies as well, I hate all. They're very similar, but I hate all pallies, all of them.
Yeah. I think I do. Well, is that because they tried to kill you?
There is that, but they don't sell that great. I think if you put a pally on them, people are like, I don't really want that.
I don't like them. They're too big and a bit bland generally. Like Pally Grandis is a really popular one, but I just think they look really boring.
It used to be really popular. They're not so popular anymore. Probably after the video I put out.
Okay, saying, "Oh yeah, this is going to kill you."
They used to see these really like ultra vibrant green ones. I got rid of all of these. I'm like, look, I don't want to have to deal with this. I don't want the money enough to have to deal with those sorts of corals. I don't mind. Zoas are fine, but no, pallies are. I learnt my lesson. So Chris Allen says his fake lime chilies are like weeds as well. And then what this goes back to actually, because I'm going to put some in my LPS tank. And this goes back to a question someone asked a few weeks ago about, can you surround an invasive coral with stinging corals so it doesn't escape? And that's part of my risk strategy is that I don't, my zoas can grow up, but then they'll come across torches. And I think that might stop some of them, although they'll be able to grow underneath them. I don't think they'll be able to grow down because of gonnies, but you're shaking your head. I don't think it'll work.
To be fair, I'm not banking.
Let's move forward 6 months, and I've had a lot of experience with them. It surprises me how they'll grow up the stems of corals, like of things like frog spawns and stuff, and you're like, well, it's obviously not working.
The only thing is, so I'm not banking on that, and if it happens in 2 years' time, fine, it's not a problem. But the thing is, and this is actually the same with Tropic Thunder, my nemesis coral that's taken over my tank, taken over my life, which Les has probably mentioned because he mentions it in literally every live stream. But yeah, so even for the first 2 or 3 years, zoas will be fantastic. It's only like years 3 to 5 or whatever. It's only after they've got out of control. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of, is it worth the glory for a couple of years?
I have a question for you now, which is an interesting one for you to think about.
Uh-oh.
So a coral usually lives long enough for us to hate it.
Yeah.
You understand the
Yeah.
concept of it. It doesn't matter if it's a Pasillipora or a Montipora or Zoas
Or a tropic thunder.
anything. Yeah, tropic thunder. Anything that has relative success is actually not what we want. If you see what I mean.
No, that's
You
not the case.
understand the concept.
With a lot of them is. But my strawberry shortcake is starting to grow too big, and it's growing onto the next rock behind it, and it's killing or stopping other corals from growing.
Yeah,
but I love it. It could fill out my entire tank, and I'll be happy with it.
That's what I was going to say. It's just not got big enough yet. It's not got big enough to annoy you.
It could be growing out my chimney in my house, and I'd still love it. But it's probably not a bad point. With SPS, you can normally frag them, especially if it's a nice coral like that. You'll have no problem selling frags.
Oh yeah, of course. I just think even if you have, I don't know, a torch coral that grows out of control, where it takes up half the tank. Eventually you'll go, I really don't want to have half a tank of torch corals. Absolutely. I wish I could have had something else there. So I feel like everything lasts long enough to become something we don't want.
Completely. And that's a problem.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
And skilled.
But and this is a problem because all our tanks are pretty small, even like 5-6 feet long. Yeah. That's not actually that big because it's big for a few years, but corals grow. You've seen them in the wild. They go the size of your bloody house.
Yeah.
So they won't ever stop growing. So, you've just got to. There comes a point when you need to do bonsai work constantly to keep any coral in check. But that's if you've got a holy grail torch and it's doing that though. You snap off a head and sell it to your local fish shop for 50 quid credit.
Imagine your mate Polo's tank in like 12 years time. It's just going to be all Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, exactly. But he'll have staff going in. I'd be like,
of course.
Jeeves, Jeffrey, please frag my Montiporas.
I thought it was your friend.
He is, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'd do if I was him. I'd be like, go on, you go and frag that, please. It's displeasing me.
Well,
but yeah.
It's I agree. I think also the fish eat the coral there as well, so it probably keeps some of it under check.
Indeed. All right, well there we go. So that is the Prestige Reef Fish and Coral of the Week, which means we move on to the news. Ryan, I know you love that jingle.
It's because I never see it coming. I always forget. that you're going to do it, and then you go, "Oh, we got to do the," and before you finish your sentence, you press the button.
Bang! Out it comes. And there's not a massive amount of reefing news, but there are two things. So, firstly, this is something I've got a subscription to Ultramarine magazine, paid for myself, no affiliation, not interested in getting an affiliation, and I wouldn't recommend this to everybody. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but if you want a coral magazine in the UK, well worth a read. Anyway, there was an article in here that was about Finest Fest, there's a shop in the UK called Finest Aquatics.
Yeah.
And they did an open day. Well, they call it Finest Fest, like a shop. I don't know what you call it. Shop show, maybe, whatever.
It's like a get together, but with
a get together. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It wasn't like a full-on coral show, but a get together. Yeah. And Ultramarine went there and did a report on it. And one of the things they mentioned was David Saxby did a talk there, and he every now and then he accidentally lets slip and talks about a product that is coming, and this had escaped my attention, but it's mentioned in the write-up of that talk, and that was I don't know, a month or two ago. And there's something called the Reef Manager. So have you seen the Kamoa KH Carer?
Yes.
Yeah. So DD have taken that and made that. It's now called the KH Manager.
Okay.
But there's a product coming called the Reef Manager, and it's like the Mastertronic, so it'll test all sorts of things: nitrate, phosphate, magnesium, calcium, whatever. I don't know any of the details, but that's coming. And I saw that and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So another multi-testing piece of equipment.
I only care if they're really, really accurate and you don't have to maintain them.
Exactly. You'll probably have to maintain it. You'll have to calibrate it from time to time, but yeah. But anyway, it's another option that will be on the market. I don't know when, a month, 6 months, 5 years, who knows?
You heard it here first. 1 month, Alex says.
You heard it here first. Next month is launching, but yeah, just on the horizon. And the other news was from Reef Builders, which was a German pet trade association says, have you heard all this stuff about whitelisting products?
Yes.
Whitelisting fish. So the idea is, for those of you in the chat who don't know, the idea is that, that there's legislation basically all over the world that is being proposed, whereby in order to import an animal, whether it's a fish, a reptile, a frog, whatever, but this is relevant for us, of course, in fish, it would have to be on a whitelist. So, for example, in Florida, the lionfish would not get on that whitelist because they're invasive species and they take over the fish. So that would not get on the list. But you have to put forward each fish, clownfish, bang-eyed cardinalfish, purple firefish / blow-up dollfish, all of those fish, you would have to go on a whitelist, and there'd have to be some kind of study to say it's okay, it's not going to be invasive, it's not an endangered species, whatever. I don't know what the criteria are. But you'd have to make a case for each fish, and only then can it go on the whitelist, and only then can you import it. And there was a German pet association who, I think they commissioned this legal report, and basically this guy's flexing his muscles, his legal muscles, and he's prepared this full-on report that says all sorts of things. He's going big on it, and he makes some really good points. So he's produced a legal paper to argue the points, and it matters because Germany is a big player in the pet trade, particularly for just general pets, but also for aquatics. So if they're kicking up a fuss, then that's a good thing. And it talks about, there are a couple of things it talks about in terms of aquatics, and it was the value to society and quality of life, and how what's at stake here is the right to keep, sell, and own animals. And particularly on the value to society and quality of life, that's a genuine thing. Like sometimes fish tanks are a source of stress, as you well know, and they can be a massive pain. But actually, a lot of the time, it can be really good for your mental health. And actually caring for an animal, even on the basic level of feeding a fish, when it responds and comes up and takes food from you, that's rewarding. People generally like helping animals, don't they?
That's why your missus is with you. She likes caring for an animal.
She likes feeding me, exactly. I do respond well to food as well.
That's good.
But there you go. So it's just there's some fighting back going on it.
Did you see in Florida when they had the meeting about it?
No.
I swear these people were so unprepared, because they almost, I think they were going to blacklist everything immediately, and then I think the proper people from the industry went there and said, look, that's a bad idea. And the guy went, I didn't realize there was this many species. It's like, what are you doing?
Why are you trying to pass that legislation then? It's not just about you and me wanting fish because we think it's cool and we like it. It's about, there are industries. There's so many people employed in the aquatics industry, and if you start taking that away, you're shutting down businesses. You're making unemployment. You're taking away people's livelihood. You're taking away. But the point really is that people care about this. I'm sure there is some harm, in the same way that keeping any pet will cause some harm. But for the almost there's no real harm done. It's not like the reefs are about the wild are disappearing because of the hobby or whatever.
In comparison to other issues with the ocean, we are insignificant.
Oh, exactly.
Look, don't get it wrong. I have pondered whether it's ethically okay to keep fish in glass boxes for years. I
pondered on a video, in fact.
I did. I put a video about it, but I have rationalized it with myself to go, look, generally speaking, I try my best. I'm not feeding them. I put them first, generally speaking. So I go, it's okay in this instance. Well, do I think it's okay to keep a tiger in someone's house? It's like, they're both wild things that are in spaces that are too small for them. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure the two are comparable, to be honest.
Well, I'm just telling you. So, but you see what I mean. So, but I have, as I said, I've come to the conclusion that we are insignificantly small into things like compared to the food industry, where I can't even remember what the percentage is, but bycatch is like 40%. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That's just really everything that just gets thrown back is 40%.
Thrown back dead,
So if you had, let's put this into perspective. If you ate a fish today, there is a high chance that another fish was killed for you to eat that fish.
Exactly.
That's it. There you go. So now you can feel as bad as I do.
But either way, there's the point really was that there's people in the industry kicking up and standing up, which is a good thing, because we don't have much representation. So if it's as part of a wider pet conversation, that's a bigger deal, because if you want to take someone's fish away, most people aren't going to be bothered. If you want to take their cat or dog away, the entire world is going to go crazy. So,
of course.
And on a sliding scale in between those two.
Yeah, because it applied to, I think it applied to reptiles and birds and everything, didn't it?
Yeah. So, but there we go. So now we've completed the news, and that means we need to do the outro. And it means that we move on to the mass debate, which today is, do we overcomplicate saltwater tanks? And the short answer is yes. Everybody is. And this is not going to be one of those videos where I just say, look, guys, you're overcomplicating this. You need to keep it simple. You're doing this wrong. I am as guilty of this as anybody. We all do it. Or, well, actually, not everybody, but most of us do it. Even people who have been in the hobby for years. You've seen, not Sanjay Joshi, the other one, Mike Paletta.
Yeah.
I always put them together because they're mates and they're like the peak of the hobby. His tank, he did a video on, Sea Friendly Reef did a video of his tank recently. And it is so overly complicated. That's not a bad thing necessarily, because of course he knows what he's doing and he's done it for good reasons. But like, if you gave it to a normal person to look after, they would have no chance. And it's the same. If you gave a normal person my tank, they'd have no chance. But I think we generally do overcomplicate things. And there were this came about. First off, someone started this as a conversation on the Prestige Reef Dork Show Facebook page, which you should join if you haven't already.
Not sponsored.
My page, so and actually also I've set that up now, so you will automatically be accepted unless the Facebook thinks you're a bot. So you
have you noticed that I've been accepting people?
Oh really?
Yeah, when people pop up, I've been accepting them.
I gotta take that away from you.
I'm like your number one employee.
No, I've got to take that power, because I've rejected a couple of people.
Have you?
Because they look like they're here to post about fraud.
Like
posts,
this,
basically.
You get a yes, and you get a yes.
I think the thing is, because if it rejects anybody whose Facebook profile is new.
Yeah.
And I've seen a couple of people who their page is like a month old.
Yeah.
And they're following 100 groups on Facebook, normally with like half naked chicks on them.
They're the ones I'm inviting in.
I know. They've got no personal information of them or whatsoever. And it's like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't necessarily mean they're not just here for some fish tanks. But anyway, whatever. That doesn't matter.
I genuinely thought I was being helpful. I'll stop doing it now.
Join the group. But whatever. No, it's fine. It doesn't really matter. If people, at the end of the day, if someone gets through and posts something that shouldn't be on there, I'll delete it and remove them. So, but I don't think that's going to happen very often. Whatever. I digress. So there are a few things, though, that came up that I just thought, and these are things that it's really understandable why people think about this, but it's massively overthinking it. Two examples in particular were, where were they? Oh, I've lost them already. That's embarrassing. I've lost them. Oh, no, here we go. Right. So there were two things. One of them was today, actually. Someone posted and said, look, I'm thinking of removing my sand bed. Could that cause me problems? And I answered it saying, yeah, absolutely could. It's a really bad idea. Don't do it, basically.
Yeah.
And there's no problem that he was trying to fix. It's just, I suspect he's seen, because I've thought about this before, he's probably seen somewhere some videos, BRS in particular, Worldwide Corals maybe, saying, look, bare bottom is just the way to go. And Jake Adams used to say, why don't you want sand? Because I want to grow corals. So it'll be something like that.
Yeah.
And he thought, okay, well, in that case, I'll take my sand bed away. But the reality is, if you're starting bare bottom, great, fine, do it. Yeah. You'll have problems for the first year or so, they say, but whatever. But if you're ripping it out, what are you actually trying to achieve? You're not trying to achieve something. You're just trying to make it better.
Yeah.
And that is overcomplicating it. Because if you've got nothing wrong with your tank, why start tinkering? And the reason is because it's just what we always want to do to make things better. But that was one example. And another one was another very understandable question. Someone was asking about how many kilos or pounds of live rock should I have per litre or gallon in my tank. and they were looking at all over the place, and you get answers from like dating back to the Berlin method, where it was like you need 400 pounds of rock for every litre. And, so basically your tank is 99% rock. And then other extremes where they'll say, you want to go negative scape and you want to have, and the reality is, for me, that's overthinking it. I don't think there should be any rule as to how much weight of rock you need in your tank. But it's the sort of thing that's very easy, especially if you're new, to think, well, hang on a second, 10 people saying 10 different things. I need to get it right. I can't get it wrong. And this is obviously very important. But the reality is, even stuff like that, for me, is overcomplicating stuff.
Yeah. I think also these days people panic a lot with different things. And this happened this morning. So one of the people I speak to, they sent me a message. So what he had done is and he'll be fine with me talking about this, he had given his tank a really good clean. He did a water change to give his tank a really good clean. When you like siphon everything, scrubbing off all the rocks to get any algae off of it. And then the next day there was a bacterial bloom. And he then sent me a message saying, look, I think that I need to start dosing nitrate and phosphate because I've got a bacterial. Don't laugh, because this is someone who I see regularly. And I said to him, look, don't panic. That will fuel the problem. At the moment, you can either leave it and it will burn its way off on its own, or you can get a UV sterilizer, and that's as long as there's high flow, because that's what affects the fish. And then he messaged me back not long afterwards going, saw the tank today, completely clear. I have to stop worrying about these things. So that is not just him. That's a lot of different people's mentality, where they go, what can I put in? I've got algae. Do I put vibrant in? I've got this. Do I put this in? So I have in the water box tank now, I have 3 urchins, because I put one in there and it wasn't enough. So what do you do if they're not enough? You put 2 more in. And because I got them in the coral farm anyway. And I even put a tiger cowrie in, just because they are the best thing. I just thought it'd be interesting. I needed something that was interesting. So I got a tiger cowrie, and they absolutely plow through that. And then once the algae has been digested and been put back into the water column, you can then remove the phosphate with a phosphate remover. But all the time it's in the algae, you're not actually removing it. So, and that's how you get your phosphate down over a period of time. But it has to be in the water column to work.
But that's the exact sort of thing I'm talking about. And it's very easy to try to add something or make a change to fix it. And the things that people do generally are things like, if your corals aren't looking good, you'll watch a BRS video that talks about how good amino acids are. So you start trying amino acids, or you'll watch a live stream where someone talks about trace elements, and you'll think, pH, it's my cobalt. pH even. It's not that these things don't matter. It's that they're not usually your solution, and people will always change their lighting spectrum and intensity. That's like one of the first things, because if you're changing it works, it's an easy fix. But there's all these things. People look for the best temperature. And people will try to change. I've done it myself. You try to put it up. You're like, oh, corals go quicker at 27 degrees. I'll bump it up a bit, and you're making all these changes. And the reality is, you need to step back from all of that. And I've drawn up a list of the things that I think matter. And basically nothing else does. So these are the things that I think matter. I might have missed some things, but I don't think so. So first thing, testing your water parameters.
100%.
And maintenance. And that includes things like water changes, looking after, replacing rower all these sorts of things.
Correct.
Just you get out what you put in, scraping algae off the glass, all those sorts of things. If your corals grow too big and they're killing out the corals, frag them back, those sorts of things. But testing is the main thing. Testing and maintenance, maintaining proper water chemistry, and what that means is salinity must be stable. 100%. Absolutely must be stable. Nitrate and phosphate must be in check. Don't necessarily have to have an exact number, but they must be in check. Same for alkalinity, calcium, and magnesium. Those are really, and temperature. Those are really the only parameters you need to worry about. That's your 95% of what you'll need. Then you need to have simple filtration. that maybe something for nitrate and something for phosphate. So that might be a skimmer and a phosphate reactor, might be a refugium, it might be anything, doesn't matter what it is, something for those two. But you can just have water changes, to be fair, on a small enough tank. But if you just have a skimmer and a phosphate reactor, that's enough. Don't necessarily need a filter roller. They're good. You don't need one. You don't need lanthanum chloride. It's a good alternative, but you don't necessarily need it. You don't need a biopellet reactor, all these things. You need good flow, massively important. Probably more flow than most people have is a good thing.
Yes, but the other thing that I think also, a lot of people worry tremendously about flow and whether it's right. I think for most tanks, one power head on one side and one power on the other side will get 90% of what you need. As the tanks grow in and it starts to block some of the flow, it becomes more of a problem.
For sure.
But for a beginner, one on one side, one on the other side is
for a new tank. I completely agree. But that's so a lot. I've often see people trying to avoid having power heads because they look ugly. Completely understandable. But it's not just about providing flow for the corals, which is massively important. If you there was a time when I had one MP10 on my first ever tank, a 3-foot tank, and I thought it was doing a really good job. The corals looked great. I then bought a second one and put it the other side, and suddenly, as soon as I turned it on, this whole mess of crap literally lifted off like it was some kind of magic trick off the sound bed, and went into the water column and then down into the sump. And I was like, how much detritus? And that's what I mean by good flow. You don't need 10 return power heads. You do when you've got a grown out tank because corals block it, but you certainly need probably 2 on either side. I think that's a really good start place. And the amount of crap that it will lift off your sound bed. So that's good flow is really important. Correct lighting, and that doesn't mean you must get the right, you must buy Kessels or Radion or whatever. It means the right lighting for your tank, and that means par, as in not too much. Too little is fine, not too much is really the thing. And ideally coverage, so covering your entire tank, but that's more of an issue for, like you say, when corals grow out. But correct lighting, so not massive overkill, and probably not underkill, but that's less important. Choosing the right tank mates, and I mean fish, corals, and invertebrates, and that's for the tank you want to set up and for your experience level. So experience level is obvious. If you're a beginner, don't go and buy a Moorish idol, or don't go and buy a copper band, those sorts of things. But also for your tank. So if you've got a tank full of firefish and little timid fish like that, don't get a really aggressive triggerfish, for example, or fish that will eat you across. So choosing the right fish for a good balanced tank, harmonious, no stress, all this sort of stuff, not too much aggression. And then just look after your animals, just take care of them. So, and that just means looking at them regularly, which we all do anyway, we all want to do. And finally, and this comes back to your point, circles back to what you said at the start, is going slow and don't try to interfere with or fix problems too quickly. And that's exactly what I mean, because it's very easy to think, I've got cyano, I need to get on top of it now, because it's easier to deal with it when it's small rather than when it's a complete outbreak. But the reality is, and BRS often say this, if you've got a problem, it's probably built up over 6 months. So it's not going to go away in 6 days.
Correct. In fact, I've never had cyano. Never.
Really?
In all the years I've been doing it, not once have I ever had it.
Maybe that's a live rock thing.
That it's possible that could be true. I'm pretty sure that's true. I might have had a patch of it somewhere and I've just forgotten, but I'm pretty sure that's true.
But if there's the exact sort of thing that's a good example of not trying to get rid of it too quickly. I had it in my tank, and it was in there for ages. And if I'd have gone chemi-clean straight away, it would have probably killed my corals. It would have a small tank like that. There's no skimmer. It would have been a problem. But I left it, did the water tests. My phosphate was really high, and my nitrate was 0. So before you start removing it and fixing the problem, you need to get that back in check. So I did that. They were back to reasonable levels. And then you once you've got on top of your water, actually just doing that, removing it, a few water changes, getting my water quality back on, and a month or 2 later, and it was gone. And you shouldn't be trying to panic. And like you say, if you're thinking, right, I've got a problem, that coral's dying, I need to turn my lights up, I need to turn my lights down, I need to buy another power head, I need to change, I need to buy an aquarium controller, I need to put in trace elements, I need to put in aminos. you know.
That's what I think. Not panicking is so important.
Yeah.
Because like you saw, obviously the water box had algae in it, and I could easily have gone, right, let's go get some Vibrant, which many people would do. Many people would do. And start, and I could pour that in, and then I haven't used Vibrant, but I know sometimes it can affect corals, and those 3 happy millipora might die.
Yeah.
So whereas if I put an urchin in there and just wait, over time, I know it will get rid of it. It'll just take a while. It's just, so do I want an instant fix, which is a bit more dangerous, or do I want potentially, it might not even fix it?
But the problem with all of this is, and everything that we've both said, it's very easy for us to say because we've made these mistakes. Yes. I certainly have.
Yeah.
I've made countless times, and I still do. There are still times when I think, like when my burner pour has receded and everything else was all right, my first thought was, maybe I should put some coral food in. And then I slapped myself. I was like, no, go and test your water. I tested my water. I've got phosphate coming out my eyeballs.
Well, that might be why.
And it might not be, but it's like, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's so easy to try to overcomplicate it when the reality is just those few things, basically water chemistry, light and flow and maintenance and testing. That's all you need, and you will fix 90% of problems if you go back to the fundamentals of that. And it might be that you need to do a bit of analysis and figure out what the problem is. So it's all well and good saying, hey, look, water quality is important. Well, if your water tests are off, how do you fix that? And you need to be able to figure out, it might be because your source water is no good. You're getting RO water from a shop that only sells RO water, not RODI, or you haven't changed your filters regularly enough, so you've got silicates or whatever. So it's not necessarily easy, but it will be one of those simple things. The fix in 1% of occasions might be that your coral isn't getting the right spectrum. Probably not. But the other 99%, it will be the basics. And it's just so easy to overcomplicate it. And I don't really have a solution as to how you avoid that. Because even I still, like I said, I still think, I wonder if I need to start dosing trace elements. And it's like, no, hang on a second. Go back to the basics, fix them, and suddenly everything's okay. And almost it's not always the case, but 99% of the time, if you go back to the basics, sort out your water parameters, in time things will be good again.
I don't have anything more to say on that because I totally agree with you. I could fill up not obviously now, but if this hadn't happened, I could fill the water box tank up very easily with soft corals. It would look beautiful. Soft corals might not be for everyone, but they are beautiful if you get the right ones. But it's not, and I could have easy fish in there. Sorry, I can have fish that are just clownfish and like things that are pretty tough. But it's not necessarily the tank I want. So I've chosen to make the tank more difficult. And that is what so many people are doing. This is something I say to people all the time. Stop trying to turbocharge your tank. Stop trying all these crazy fancy things that you see on YouTube or anywhere else. Get the basics right. Keep corals just alive first. And then once you've got the keeping them alive bit, if you want to start pushing the boundaries, by all means go for it. But don't be a beginner and push the boundaries because it's just going to make life harder for you.
And that's exactly right. It's just very easy to look around. And when you start watching more advanced conversations, and I don't mean this live stream, I mean when you get if you watch like Reef Bum and Reef Dudes, they have people like serious reefers on who really know.
They've never invited me on.
Exactly, yeah. But who really know the science and all these sorts of things. And those are valuable conversations. I'm not saying those people are giving bad information, but if you take that, they're operating at the very top of the hobby, and if you take that information and you're like, right, so this means I need to get my bacteria right, I need to start pouring bacteria. It's not the correct application of it.
Yeah,
so it's very, very easy to get it wrong, and it's a minefield. But there does come a point when even if you still almost try to make the same mistakes, you can correct yourself and you say, look, actually no, it's the basics. And if you ever watch a Coral Euphoria video, he will never be talking about the latest trace elements that he started dosing, rubidium or whatever. You ask him like, so what do you dose? And he'll be like, well, just 2-part and iodine. It's like, no, I mean, but what are the trace elements? He'll be like, no, that's it.
And there you go. You heard it here first. Only dose those, and you'll have a beautiful day.
Yeah, but it's so easy to think of all these other things, especially when there's just so much noise and so many videos and so many articles and comments and opinions about what your problem is, when the reality is it shouldn't be all these complicated issues. Like Jake Adams talked about, he used to, or was it Than? One of them was talking about that. I think Than used to phone Jake Adams when he had a problem that he couldn't work out, and he knew Jake Adams wouldn't say, "Have you tested your salinity, mate?" Or maybe it's your phosphate. He wouldn't do that because of the level he knew Than was at.
Yes, yeah.
And he would be like, test your copper. And Than would be like, "I've done that. I've done an ICP test." And Jake would be like, no. Get a copper test kit, because sometimes ICP tests don't register it. And he'd do that, and it lo and behold, that's like the 1% of the hobby.
Yeah.
But most of us, myself included, are not in that 1%.
Not in that 1%.
So we should not be looking for those solutions, because it's almost certainly not in that category.
I would be very interested. Actually, this is a question I'm going to put on the spot, and don't be like try and cover this up. Right. What percent? Because I'll know if you're lying. What percentage do you think you are in the hobby?
Oh, what, like in the top 10% or whatever?
Yeah, are you in the top 10%, 50%, 30%?
So I'll clarify. I think probably the top 10%.
Yeah.
And that's not because I'm a genius and I figured everything out and I know all the science and I understand it, all the biology and all that sort of stuff, because I don't. Yeah. But it's because most people in the hobby, from what I understand, and from people like BRS talk about this, most people leave the hobby, like the majority of every year. If 1,000 people set up a tank each year, 900 of those will leave the hobby.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I'm the top 10% because I'm a genius. I'm saying because
the top 10% of the shit ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or compared to the shit ones.
Yeah. Basically, I'm past that level. So and this is the thing, and it's not because I don't think of myself as someone who you should this guy is the one person you should listen to. And I don't make videos trying to do that. It might come across that way sometimes, I don't know. But my intention is to give you a perspective, often the perspective you've not thought about.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't. So it's not like there are levels, aren't there? So if you want to look at it, levels, you've got Sanjay Joshi, Mike Paletta, Eli Meyer, all those sorts of people. They are at the top.
Yeah.
Then you've got the likes of I don't know, maybe Jake Adams and people like that a level below. And then you've got people like Keith Berkelhammer, Reef Bum, and Abe Coral Euphoria, people like that, brilliant at keeping corals, really successful, have been doing it for years. And then maybe the level below that, again, is where I come in.
And then 7 or 8 levels below that is where I am.
So. Well, there you go. Well, I don't know. We'll come back onto that. But so I'm at the stage where I know what I'm doing. I can keep a tank. I know how to look after it. But I can't necessarily diagnose every problem even in my own tank.
Yeah.
So it's not like So I think I would be, if there were 10 levels. You know, Mike Paletta being level 1. Not saying he is, but you know what I mean. I would probably be around level 5. Well,
a minute ago, you said if there's 10 levels, you'd be level 1 because you'd be the top 10%.
No. That was a different. I was saying I'd be 10% because 90% are new.
Yeah.
Where do you think you are? If there are 10
I'm not
levels,
answering such a controversial question. I put you on the spot. I actually think so. After I asked that question, I think that there are different things as well that you can specialize in. I think I would be better at fish than you are. With even just identifying some of them, whereas you would be better at identifying some of the
SPS,
specific acropora and things like that. So I would say I actually would say I'm probably slightly below you. I was
going to say the other way around.
See, it's interesting because I have a whole wide variety of all different corals, so I'm trying to keep all different things alive in the same water. So I don't know, maybe we're just at the same level then, but I genuinely, I swear on my life, I thought maybe just slightly below you, or if not at the same level. But I don't consider myself an absolute super genius.
And that's basically, I think we both see ourselves probably as middle of the pack. You know, we know what we're doing and we're comfortable in
maybe a bit up above the middle.
Above middle of the pack. Yeah, probably. No, to be fair, probably is about right. Know what we're doing, comfortable in what we know, but importantly also comfortable in what we don't know.
100%, yes.
Which is the most important thing. And I've learned that. I wasn't always like that. In the early years of the hobby, I thought I knew everything. Because after a year, you're like, I've nailed this. I know everything. And then it's when you, a few years, the longer you're into it, the more you realize how little you know. And that's kind of the stage I'm at.
I think it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, isn't it? Where the people who think they know the most are often the people that know the least.
Right. Okay.
Because they lack the ability to understand how much more there is to learn. I'm pretty sure it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
It's exactly what it is. Interesting. What's an example of the Dunning-Kruger effect? For example, a new employee.
It applies to people in the hobby so much.
I bet. A new employee might believe they understand the job requirements and not ask enough questions or seek feedback from their supervisor. So when my current job, when I first started it 5-6 years ago, I'd been a solicitor for a number of years before then. And I went in at a level that when I applied, I was like, that's the right level. Yeah. After a couple of weeks, I was like, I should be the level above. I was like, do you know, I know. And then like 6 months later, I was like, there is no way I should be the level above. Absolutely no way. I'm not at the wrong level. And that's because you get the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, you start to learn that there's more than you actually realized.
A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing.
That to some extent, that is why forums are so dangerous sometimes, because you don't know. People who often think they know are the ones giving the information usually.
Very true.
So you got to pick who you trust carefully.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because forums are better than some places like Facebook, because most people will have a tank thread, or a lot of people will have a tank thread on a forum. So if someone gives you advice, you can click on their tank thread. Certainly can on Ultimate Reef anyway, and you might see that their tank's just been set up and they've been in the hobby for 2 months, or you might see that they've been in the hobby 30 years and their tank is thriving, and that's the person you want to listen to, not me, that person. Whereas with Facebook, you don't have that. You get to know people if you're on a group for long enough, but you can't validate them. You can on YouTube to an extent, but I don't think it's the same. I used to update my thread on Ultimate Reef all the time. I don't so much now, but I still probably update it more often than I do tank updates. So you can still validate YouTubers better than Facebook, but I think you can validate people on forums even better for the most part. But it's about learning who you can trust and who you can't. But...
So basically, if you're one of those people out there that thinks you know the hobby, you're one of the people that we're talking about.
You don't know squat. And on that bombshell,
it
is time to end the show. Do you have anything else you wanted to?
No, the only thing I wanted to say is that I was obviously low energy, not particularly happy, less funny than usual, and I will be better next week. That's what I wanted to say.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I hope this has kind of cheered you up to some extent. And it's always nice talking about fish tanks, isn't it? But for it being so fresh from such a serious problem is, thank you.
So anyway.
All right. Well, we will see you all next week. Don't forget to listen to the podcast, download the podcast, and join the Prestige Reef Dork Show Facebook group. Ryan will let anyone in, so just
I'll let anyone. Any bots you want to come in?
And we will see you all next week. Cheers, guys.
See you later.